Hi guys, it's Minik from earlylearningmom.com. I wanted to come and do a video today. I got a comment on my blog, and it was referring to some of the early signs that I saw with Z that made me think that maybe he had autism. And this mom has a young one that has been diagnosed, I believe, with global delays and is at high risk for autism. And she also wanted to know how I felt the Doman method program helped my son. So I thought, instead of trying to answer that in a comment, that I would do a video, and hopefully I can share that link with her, and hopefully she'll see this. So the number one issue or thing that arose when Z was little was my mama intuition kicked in, and I knew something was off. Now, Z was amazing at sleeping through the night. He slept through the night before Wesley ever did. We struggled with that with Wes. When he was a baby, he had some big tonsils and adenoids that need to be removed, and it caused a lot of sleeping issues. So he slept really well. He nursed really well. He was a tiny, tiny little guy, but overall that stuff was great. And these are just things I noticed, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are signs for autism. It's just what we noticed. So Z was really clingy to me. He needed, if he was awake, he needed to be with me. I baby weared him a lot. I had a cuddle wrap, a P-Pod cuddle wrap that I wore him in, and eventually he moved on to the carrier. And then eventually he got too big for that, or not too big, it was just uncomfortable. I switched him to the toddler Tula. So I probably baby weared until he was 3. But a big thing was nobody could really hold him except for me. I had to, if family wanted to hold him, I had to get him to sleep, and then I could pass him off and he would be okay there. So that was something we noticed. We also struggled with some other issues with Z. His head at birth was in the 10th percentile, and by 4 months old, his head was in the 98th percentile, and his body was in the 3rd or below 3rd percentile. So he had a large growth in his head, which apparently can be a sign of autism. So he also struggled. We noticed at about 2 months old, he struggled from right torticollis, which is when one side of the neck is tight and the other side is kind of loose. So we noticed that he always slept like that. When he would be sitting up, he was tipped. So we started some physical therapy and some physiotherapy and some occupational therapy really young. I think he was 2.5 months. When they're that little, they get them in here anyhow into therapy super quick. If you need something when they're older, it becomes more difficult. But we were able to do a lot of physical therapy with him. And at the time, the therapists weren't concerned, but I was more concerned. I noticed that he wasn't meeting certain milestones, like emotional milestones. So he wasn't really smiling all that much at us. That was a big red ticket item here. Smiles were very rare. Eye contact was off. Yeah, that was stuff that I really noticed when he was really little. When I'm talking in the first year. After that, once he was also delayed in crawling and walking. Now, we expected this because his head was so large and he had the right torticollis thing going on. And we actually were concerned they were going to send him for an MRI if his head continued to grow at the rate it was. However, it did slow down, so we never had to do the MRI. They were concerned that if it continued to grow, that there might be a problem, but there wasn't. So he didn't crawl until he was 11 months old, and he didn't walk till he was 15 or 16 months old. Let's see, he walked in September, so May, so June 13, July, August, September. So he was 16 months when he walked for the first time. Now, once we hit that walking milestone at about 16 months, that's when we noticed big things with Z. He would just run, and he had no concept of danger when it came to running. He would just run back and forth, and he wasn't even looking when he was running. He would be looking to the side and running. Climbing became an issue. We also had just scares like that, like just him having no concept of danger. So at this point, at about 18 months is when I became starting to get really concerned. I kind of felt like maybe things were okay, but I knew the wait list for therapy was really long, so I wanted to make sure that he was on the list, even though I was still a little in denial. So what happened at that point was, at 18 months, I asked his pediatrician to send us for a referral to the Child Development Clinic, which she denied. I explained to her, basically she told me she didn't send anybody till they were 2. And I explained to her that through the grapevine and through other parents that had children with autism, the development center will see children younger if there's a sibling, and they prioritize those siblings because there's a higher risk that they need intervention. And she was adamant she was not sending him. Thankfully, she was 8 months pregnant. So I purposely booked an appointment after I knew that she would be gone on maternity leave, and I met with her replacement pediatrician. And she was absolutely amazing. She was concerned about the same things that I was, especially based on family history. So we were able to get him seen, and I believe Z was diagnosed at 22 months with autism spectrum disorder. We were also told it was a high probability that he also had ADHD just based on the running and the hyperactivity, but that could not be diagnosed until he was older. So those were kind of the red signs that we saw. That being said, Z had a lot of strength too. And this is something I notice with kids that, they might have some delays, but there are kids like Z that pick up on certain things. So, sorry about the sun. It's just the way I'm in the parking lot right now. So certain kids have these crazy strengths, like learning their colors and their shapes and their sight words and their alphabet and their numbers, and they can read words at a very young age. Now, at the time when I saw this with Z, we were doing a very modified Doman program. We were using Brill Kids, which is an awesome software program that you can use on the computer, and it's a whole curriculum. And so Z was reading at about 18 months. He knew his alphabet much younger. I have videos on this channel of Z at 16 months pointing out sight words and pointing out shapes. And so those were his real strong suits. He clinged to letters and numbers and words. And so he was really bright there. And he's super smart. He struggled with these social skills and impulse control. And another thing, and biting. We went through a biting phase too, but that was older. But those younger years, those really early signs were, a real attachment, like really needing to be with me, not really smiling when he should be smiling. Eye contact was not there. And another thing I noticed, and it was blown off, and I don't know whether it's related or not, he slept a lot. And I was told, enjoy it. But I knew it wasn't, I know babies sleep a lot, don't get me wrong, and newborns sleep a lot, but I think at 5 months old, he was sleeping he was sleeping 15, 16, 17 hours a day. So there was a lot going on there. I feel like that was something too, but I was just told by the doctor to enjoy it because it wasn't going to last. And boy, it didn't. So yeah, younger stuff, it really, really trust your mama intuition. watch those milestones. And as for the Doman program, I think the Doman program saved my son's life. We were doing the Doman program really young. Like, we were using it for tummy time when he was 2, 3, 4 months old. And that really was his means of communication. So if once he got older and we were doing like the ABA program, which worked really well for my eldest, but not so well for my youngest, they were able to get him engaged for matching and stuff like that, and answering questions by pointing to words or matching words. And because he could read, it really helped him. And it gave him, I find that having seen the word, like, you know, when you learn by touch, feel, scent, all of that. And I feel that he learned to speak. He may not be overly conversational, but he can request and he knows what he wants and he can label things. And I think by teaching him how to read the words, it reinforced in his mind. It was another like neuron connection where he was able to connect words to objects to be able to vocalize them. So I believe that really helped him. Now, that being said, I wish we had started the Doman program way earlier, baby stages, but this mama needed to have a gentle push by a friend to just make things happen. But if you have the opportunity, like right now, the opportunity for parents and the Doman program is just amazing. Now that you can take the program online, like I mentioned this in other videos, I had to leave for 8 days, find childcare, find the funds to take the program, which was way more expensive when it's live. I had to find accommodations, car rental, flights. I didn't even have a passport at the time. I had to get my passport, just all of this stuff, and be away from my kiddos for 8 days. And that was really hard. Nowadays, that's all online, and you can do that online, and you can, do it during nap time. You can do it, like, I wish that was I think Z would have benefited even more from this program. He has benefited so much, and I've talked about that in numerous videos, but I think he would have benefited even more had I had the same tools that I have now, and had I started something sooner. But that being said, I definitely think the Doman if you have any suspicion that your child is delayed, catching it now, you can prevent all of that, or at least minimize any delays that are happening or from a brain injury. So definitely, to answer your question, I would say if you have the opportunity to look into the Doman method, I would take the online course. You and your husband or partner, if they're involved, can take that course, and you guys can really get a feel from that. It's like a minimal investment, and you can start implementing some of that stuff and getting in touch with it gives you access to some of the coaches and stuff like that, which is instrumental. I still reach out to we've been doing this program for several years, and I still reach out to my coach. I don't know what we'd do without him. He's amazing. And they are so, they just know what your family needs and works with your family. And so definitely, if you have any doubts, contact them, see if the program's right for you. But based on what you wrote in your comment, I think it would be, there's no harm in doing it, especially, like, this program is great even for kids that are neurotypical. Like all these kids benefit from learning how to read and, being physically active. And so you can either prevent something that may happen, or you may help enhance your child. So I think you're on the right track, and I hope I answered your question. And it's really hard. Like last week, Z turned 8. So for me to think back to okay, what was it that made me think there was something wrong, I would say the number one thing was my mama intuition. And it told me I needed to do more. And it just had me push. There was some barricades, let's just put it that way. There were some barricades in the diagnosis process. And I had to really push in some situations that I probably shouldn't have had to push in to get him the services he needed and the diagnosis he needed and the funding he needed. And but yeah, it doesn't define him. He's still Zakari. He is my amazing little boy. And I know working through with the Doman program, we're getting him closer and closer to his full potential. So anyhow, thanks for watching. I hope that helped. Be sure to check out my blog at www.earlylearningmom.com, and we will talk to you guys soon. Take care.